Good morning. It is February 16th, 2021, and this is the regular board meeting for Franklin County. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner, you want to speak into your microphone when you're talking? No, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the first order of business here is to approve January 19th and February 2nd's minutes. Is there any additions, corrections, commissioners?
No corrections.
That was Commissioner Peck. Commissioner Mullen?
Yeah, no corrections that I can see.
Okay, unanimously approve the minutes. At this point in time, we'd like to welcome Tom French for an update with the HAPO Center. Are you there, Tom?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so a quick update on what's been going on out here. As you guys know, we were a COVID testing site that started in June, middle of June last summer, and it wrapped up at the end of December, which really helped us out a lot. It kept us afloat. Quite a few people in the building, so it was a lot like having an event here almost every day. That did end on the end of December, and then now as we're transitioning into the new year, we have new guidance for miscellaneous venues that have been provided by the state, and we have already begun booking some events that we could host in accordance with that guidance. Had a very successful training meeting last week, and are getting ready to have a retail event this week, as long as the snow doesn't stop it. But as soon as we had a crack in the door and had some guidance on how we could move forward with safely having events, we began booking them. People want to be here. The promoters are excited to be here, obviously, and get their businesses back up and running. And that's where we stand right now.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. French?
Tom, this is Commissioner Peck. Question about, well, let me rephrase it. Not a question, an observation and a request. Please make sure you coordinate with legal counsel with respect to our contracts, given that we can't foresee what phase we may or may not be in. Let's just make sure that whatever contracts we're using for clients specifies that those things are outside our control. We can't guarantee that we'll be in the phase that we are when they book or have the same access and opportunities as when they book. I guess as you may have already done that, and if so, thank you in advance. If you've not, please do so. Thanks.
Absolutely, we have, and we will continue doing that. Thank you.
Commissioner Mullen?
Yes, this is Commissioner Mullen. What guidance did you get, and what are they requiring you to do to hold events out there?
Well, the state updated their miscellaneous venues COVID-19 requirements for Phase 1 and Phase 2. And it just lays out, one, the capacity of the building, which we are capped at 25%, or 100 people. Phase 2 is 25% or 200 people. It allows for retail events, and Phase 1 allowed only business meetings or trainings that couldn't be done virtually. Phase 2 allows for in-person business meetings to be conducted. So what we're really going after is changing the way that how we look at some of our events and what we're really going after. And what we're finding is a lot of these retail events, not necessarily trade shows, but the hot tub sales, the RV sales, the car sales, where you generally don't have 100 people at one time show up. Those are the folks that really are itching to get out here and get something going They have to have COVID supervisors on site that ensure mask wearing, social distancing is being practiced. They keep track of how many people are in the building. I also will have personnel on site ensuring that masks are being worn and social distancing is being practiced. Obviously, just the general cleaning and upkeep and disinfecting that honestly we would do during a normal event.
All right, thank you.
Give you a quick snapshot there.
Yeah, Tom, I got a couple questions for you. How many people were on the payroll and how many people are still on the payroll out at the Hapo Center?
The beginning of 2019, we had a staff of 13, and now we have a staff of 3.
A staff of 3. Okay, and then thinking outside the box, you know, the inclement weather we're having right now, have you reached out to any of the car dealerships about doing an indoor sale, or RV centers doing an indoor sale, or, you know, just utilizing the space much the same way that the hot tubs are and trying to utilize and create income as best we can? Have you thought about any of that?
Yes, sir. We are reached out to it. We are working with a really large RV dealer they already had contracts for a few shows this year. And we're just continuing to have to kind of jump around the board a little bit to try to get them dates around reopening and different phases that we're in, or hopefully we'll be in later down the road. So yes, the indoor sales are something that we're looking at. We're having a lot of phone meetings with different car dealerships, RV dealerships. So the issue that they're having right now is, you know, we can't unfortunately just turn the faucet on here. There has to be a certain amount of time for promotion for these folks to be able to get inventory. I guess is one of the issues that the RV dealership is dealing with right now, is just getting enough inventory. So we look forward to seeing those guys here, I believe, next month, kind of toward the latter part of the month. Now it's just a promotion game, having enough time to actually promote the events.
And has anybody reached out to you? I know that they've, now that we're in phase 2, we're starting football season. It's a spring football for all these schools. Have any of the schools reached out to you to use that as a practice facility?
If I understood you correctly, the local schools?
Yeah, the local schools are now going to be able to have their football season this spring. Our coach at Connell was very upset because we were locked in phase 1, and thanks to the hard work of Amanda McKinley over there in Yakima, she got the numbers straightened out, and we're in phase 2, so they are going to be able to compete. And I was just curious as if you have had any schools reaching out to you, because I know when I was coaching at Connell, we practiced in the track facility, but it did have a dirt floor in that arena.
No, we have not been in contact with the schools or had the schools contact us, but that is something that we can definitely do, reach out to them and see what their needs are.
Yeah, because they can't get out on the fields and practice right now. So, well, okay, well, thank you very much. Is there any other questions by any other commissioners? Tom, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
And keep up the great work.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All righty, and that moves us down to public comment. Keith, is there anybody on the phone or anything to read?
No, there's not, and I understand that there is a problem with the sound on the YouTube feed. The AV capture is working, but they're troubleshooting the YouTube, so I would imagine that the public has not had an opportunity to hear what's transpired so far, so we may have to do public comment a little later, but I don't have any callers at the moment.
Okay, yeah, and now that we're in phase 2, you know, it's next week we can have the camera going and the commissioners can be in the room as long as we social distance. So we were hoping to be in here today. I am in the chamber today, and that's why I'm not visual, because we couldn't get the laptop up to get it working here in the chamber. But next week we'll have the camera working and we'll have this back going, and hopefully we'll have whoever wants to show up in the chamber here to have our meeting. So moving down, we got office business. I think we only have one voucher here. Commissioner Mullen, do you have that
Yes,
voucher?
I move forward, move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $168,304.19 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the Auditor's Office and the County Administrator.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we're down to the consent agenda.
Commissioner, I do have one caller. on the
Okay,
line if you
let's
need-
take the caller then. Thank you, Keith.
Good morning. Is this Alexia?
Yes, it is.
You have the floor for 3 minutes.
Alrighty, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Commissioners. My name is Alexia. I'm a community organizer here in Franklin County. I just had a question regarding redistricting and if you're planning on redistricting for the general election. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing the answer to this question.
She wanted to ask questions for the redistricting.
Did you say you wanted to ask some questions about redistricting?
I didn't hear it either. I
It was
couldn't
a question
understand.
about redistricting. We'll have to go back to the record and make sure her questions are responded to.
Okay.
There was no specific
Yeah.
question.
No.
It's just that she had questions.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Five items on the consent agenda.
I move for approval of consent agendas 1 through 5.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the consent agendas 1 through 5 with no ask for discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent agenda passes. Keith, we're down to administration office business.
I do have one other caller if you'd like
Okay.
to take that.
Yep, let's take it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I have a moment?
Yes.
So there is no sound on YouTube. However, AV Capture has sound. So if those in the public would like to get on AV Capture, they would hear it. For live purposes. We will take the AV Capture and put it to YouTube so that they can hear that afterwards on YouTube, but right now, IS cannot change it and they don't know what happened to the sound on YouTube. So if those who are wishing live to hear it will need to go to the public website and go under AV Capture to hear it live.
And do you have a mic over there, Ms. Milham, so that they did hear that?
I don't know how they would hear that.
Okay, Keith, you want to reiterate that they need to go to AV capture?
Yeah, for those who are attempting to watch on YouTube, the sound is not working apparently. So we would invite you to go over through the county's website to the AV Capture platform where the sound is working.
Keith, this is Sean. Can we pause it and try to restart the system so that we can have that? Because the public is not going to be able to hear any of that direction, and if they can't listen to the published method of hearing in simultaneous time with the other participants, we really need to try to get that figured out. Or provide a phone number that people could call in and listen to.
May I suggest that we take a 5-minute recess and I'll reboot with a new YouTube and see if IS can get the new going. Can we do a 5-minute recess?
Yeah. We'll take a 5-minute recess, come back with hopefully YouTube with voice. It's 9:18.
Okay.
Thanks for bearing with us. We are back, but we still do not have any audio on the YouTube. And there's a note on there to go to AV Capture if you want to hear the audio, or you can listen to the recording, and we will attach AV to YouTube for the archives video. So calling the meeting back to order. Keith, we're to administration office business.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the weekend, Commissioner Peck received a letter from the Tri-Cities National Park Committee, upon which he represents Franklin County. They're requesting Franklin County's support to purchase the National Archives and Record Administration Building in Seattle. Excuse me, not purchase it, but prevent that from being sold. It's currently owned by the federal government, and for historical preservation purposes, they would like to keep that. And so they've asked our support. And I know Commissioner Peck has much more detail than I have, and I think he wanted to speak to that, but there's a letter that they're requesting.
So, yeah, I'll pick it up from there. The Manhattan Project National Park Committee is unanimously requesting support from our U.S. senators to block the pending sale, at least temporarily, of the sale of the archive building in Seattle. The agency that currently controls that facility is the National Archives and Records Administration in Seattle. The issue revolves around the fact that there are thousands, maybe millions of records that pertain to the Hanford Reservation, the early settlers who were there, who were pushed out for Hanford, downwinders in Franklin County, as well as Benton County, First Nations people, indigenous Native American tribes, millions of records that have never been digitized, sorted, even reviewed to anybody's recollection. They've simply been stored. And the federal government is suggesting that two things. One, they would move some or all of these records to Riverside, California, or somewhere in Kansas, maybe Kansas City. And they also point out that the retention period for a lot of these records is long past, so there doesn't appear to be any legal prohibition on these records being destroyed. And because these are central to the history of the Hanford Reservation and in many respects to the people of our own county, I think it's important that we join every other entity that's a member of the National Park Committee in making this request. I'm not, like either of you two gentlemen, a fan of spending more federal money, but in this case, it's an opportunity that once lost will never come back. If these records are lost in transit, destroyed intentionally because of the retention period or anything else that should happen to them, that's a huge loss. It's also a big part of the National Park's mission to research and tell the story of the history of Hanford and the surrounding communities. Their ability to do that is greatly reduced without these records. WSU, in partnership with a number of agencies, is willing to take on digitizing these records and providing a copy to the federal government. And if the federal government is insistent on selling this structure, then rather than shipping these somewhere else, finding a secure facility here in the Tri-Cities area where these can be protected and preserved while they're being digitized. So I think that's sort of the long and the short of it. If anybody's got any questions beyond that, there's no fiscal implication directly to our county or other counties. These would be federal funds. And again, they're still taxpayer dollars, and I get that. But I think the history of our county and the history of the Hanford Reservation and how the two intersect gives us a legitimate interest in helping to preserve and protect those records. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Mullen, any questions?
No, no questions. I do feel it's important to preserve those records and our history. So I think we should take every effort that we can to try to retain those.
As a farmer, I'm just going to ask the question bluntly: how much is this going to cost? Is there any idea of a figure, Commissioner Peck?
I do not know. The initial request is to have the senators block the federal government from selling the archive building in Seattle and leave things status quo as they are. And if that happens, I suspect there is no cost. In the alternative, rather than letting these records be destroyed, they would want to move them here, and the request is for the federal government to fund such a facility while these records are being digitized. And I suppose a third option, which is to have a stay of sorts where the records would remain, the sale of the building would be delayed, and to provide time for the records to be digitized before they were moved. Any of those options is better than the current federal government proposal to sell the buildings and ship some, maybe all, but possibly just some of the records to Kansas and California, and possibly destroy portions of them that aren't required to be retained. So the short answer is nobody knows. It's a request of the federal government to intervene, and hopefully it's without cost.
Agreed. So do we need a motion on this or just a consensus?
I'm just asking for board consensus to sign this. I represent Franklin County on the National Historic Park Board, and I didn't feel it was appropriate to add Franklin County's support and signature without board consensus. So that's all I'm looking for.
Well, I'm in agreement, so you have the consensus of the board.
All right, thank you.
Keith, any more administration business?
No, I do have 2 callers on the public call-in line.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take the calls.
Hey, Keith, before we do that, can I add something?
Certainly.
I just wanted to confirm, from what I heard earlier and from what I've been trying to view online, is the public has not been able to hear contemporaneously the meeting, is my understanding. Is that correct?
There was
YouTube.
A notice placed on the YouTube channel to ask people to go to the AV Capture platform so they could hear.
But are they able to hear that in real time?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to...
Yes, they are.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Shirley, do you want to send up? Oh, there it is. Thank you. Good morning. Is this Luanda?
It is.
Hi, Luanda. You have the floor.
Thank you. I am so excited, first of all, that we are going into a different phase. Maybe we can leave this twilight zone, but I know that Commissioner Didier thanked Amanda McKinney, but they're also, from what I understand, that Will McKay also had a huge hand in that from Benton County. And since you all serve on the health board with him, I thought that it should be that we recognize him as well. But I didn't know. I know at one time before we became tied with the HAPO, there was one of the commissioners that would kind of oversee the track. I don't know if that is still functioning that way. But anyhow, I was hoping that there was a way to do some sort of wedding show. I know the gentleman isn't on the line anymore, but maybe he could be given this information. I know that there is a 200-person limit. But I know that brides would be thirsty, even if it's by appointment. But you know, this affects, with all the wedding closures, it affects musicians, photographers, DJs, stylists, dress stores, tuck stores, decor, florists, wedding planners, food, people that do catering. It's just the number of people affected by cancellations of events is tremendous. So anyhow, I was just hoping that there was some way. I know usually they're held in January, but people would be excited to have anything. I know I'm a wedding planner, and many of my weddings were canceled last year or moved to this year, and so it would really help jumpstart and get us back into wedding planning with a lot of new people that have moved here They don't know what's available, and a wedding show would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this Alexia?
Yes, it is.
We couldn't hear you very well the first time, so you might want to speak as loud as you can.
Okay, my question was regarding redistricting and if you're planning to redistrict for the general election.
We are taking that under advisement in the sense that the board is discussing that issue. No final plans or decisions have been made thus far, but we are working on a plan to do that.
Alrighty, thank you. And the public will be updated, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Public
Okay.
needs to be involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think that's all my callers right now.
Okay, so that was the last of the callers, and that was public comment. I'd like to make the announcement that tomorrow, February 17th at 3 p.m. in the afternoon at 3rd and Clark, we are going to have our workshop with the public, and please know that we're going to practice social distancing and mask wearing, and we're going to have the first workshop on our Dominion voting machines on what the public would like to see done as far as making sure that they're counting the ballots correctly. So that'll be tomorrow at 3 p.m. Again, February 17th, Wednesday, at 3 p.m. at 3rd and Clark. So with that, we move down to...
Commissioner Peck?
Yep, go ahead, Commissioner Peck.
Point of clarification, the activity tomorrow at the Election Center, as I understand it, is a canvassing board workshop, not a Board of Commissioners workshop, correct?
Correct, yes, but it is open to the public. It's a canvassing board, and all we're doing is discussion.
Right, and so I would just note that while it would be open for more than one commissioner to attend, only one commissioner can participate lest it become an unadvertised public meeting of the Board of Commissioners. So I'm just offering that so that if Commissioner Mullen and myself, for example, want to attend and observe, there's no legal prohibition on us doing that. I just don't want anybody to misperceive it as a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, and just a reminder to each of us that we can't conduct any county business there. I'm bringing this up so that everybody knows the rules and the canvassing board activities are not hampered in any way. So appreciate that. And while I've got the floor for a moment, since, Mr. Chairman, you've added a comment, it seems an appropriate time to add Commissioner comments. Any objection from the board to Commissioner comments at this time?
No, go ahead.
Okay. There's been some discussion of the events of this past weekend, directly and indirectly, regarding our movement to Phase 2. I believe it was early Saturday, I got a follow-up call from Commissioner McKinney, one of the new commissioners up in Yakima, who asked me about the math behind the numbers for the reporting for our various criteria, and she expressed concern that the numbers didn't seem to add up to her, and that she was working to pull together all the numbers to find out if, in fact, they were accurate. Had a conversation moments after, or minutes after, with Commissioner Greg Tompkins, probably one of the most senior commissioners in the state of Washington now by years of service. And the three of us, Commissioner McKinney, Commissioner Tompkins, and myself, spent a good part of Saturday and Sunday working with the health districts and the hospital in Walla Walla in securing the correct numbers and making sure that they got to the State Department of Health. And once the State Department of Health had those numbers, our legislative representatives, Senator Brown, Representative Binky, and others, and I don't mean to leave anybody out, but those are the ones I know of, pushed on the governor's staff to get the reconsideration. So this was an excellent team effort between multiple counties, myself representing Franklin, Greg Tompkins out of Walla Walla, Will McKay out of Benton County, and Commissioner Amanda McKinney out of Yakima. getting the data pushed forward to the state, and then our state representatives picking up the ball and getting it pushed to the governor's office. Just want everybody to have a full and complete picture of how that transpired, and thank all my counterparts and our folks at the state level who collectively as a team made this happen. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I think we're going to move into executive session.
I do have,
Oh, go ahead.
I do have one more caller
Okay.
calling in. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. I really want to celebrate that as well. I think that is great news. Is there a fuller sense of other counties that are going to go through their data and push this to the front of the legislature and to the governor? I know you touched on that, but can you give a little more detail as to how much momentum is going across the state to get this data correct? We hear it daily on Kona, how they're so out of whack.
If I may, Commissioner, just
Absolutely, go ahead, Keith.
Respond to that. Yes, Michelle, there is a coordinated effort across the state to make sure that the data is correctly reported. All of the counties in the state of Washington are now in Phase 2. There has not been what Phase 3 or subsequent phases look like, or what parameters will be required for us to meet to advance to an additional phase. Those have yet to be determined, I suppose. Right now, we're focused on making sure that we maintain our numbers within the 4 categories that have been listed for Phase 2. So with that, there's more to be decided that we just don't know yet.
One more follow-up question, if I may.
Certainly.
Is this because of a modeling, some kind of mathematical modeling that is messing up the data?
No, it's just my
Or
understanding.
is it a reporting issue?
Yeah, it was a reporting issue with one of the hospitals in our region. Miscalculated some data and had to recalculate that. But once that was determined that we met the statewide parameters, we were able to get the approval to move to Phase 2.
Separate question, if I may, and I'll be brief. You know that the Congressman Simpson has levied a bill in Congress to wipe out all 4 dams. Have you had any contact discussion, any of you, with our state representatives and Congress people about that? Because it's now in that level. I truly wish the God Squad had been allowed to go through. We had a lot of pushback for that.
Yeah, there has been no official correspondence with members of the congressional delegation, either in Washington or Idaho, but we're well aware that that is a critical issue.
Well, last year I went to all the representatives. Simpson's group would not meet with me. I did go to the legislature in Idaho. I went all the way to the governor's office, and I would like and ask respectfully to make this a priority. I know it's an uphill battle, but we have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last caller that I have.
Okay, with that, we'll move into executive session, RCW 42.30.110.
Commissioner, sorry.
Chairman Didier, if I may interrupt, our council had a previous hearing in federal court scheduled for 9:30. We thought the commissioner meeting, when this was coordinated a couple weeks ago, we thought he would be available earlier. We will need to go into recess until about 10:30. I have not seen an advisement where he finished up that hearing earlier. He did not think it should exceed 10:30. But if we could just take a recess and then come into public meeting, and then we could state the purpose of the executive session with an estimate for how long we anticipate that may last.
Okay, is there any conflicts, commissioners, with any other obligations?
This is Commissioner Mullins.
This is Commissioner Peck. I can make adjustments and be available. I I would ask Mr. Sant to clarify if we need to keep this meeting open, meaning keep the electronics open and recording, and we all just mute and come back in 45 minutes, or what are the logistics of how we should handle this? And after we get that answer, I did have one other commissioner comment before we went to public phone calls.
I think it would be fine as far as for the recess. We could keep it going. If you'd prefer, keep things going since we do have it working now. If that is easier, we could simply post a note, recess until 10:30. That way, once we know we have all the electronics working, we might not want to reset or adjust that to keep on schedule. That would be probably the suggestion. I know we've posted other things on YouTube before where we've been able to post a message of saying resuming meeting at a certain time. If that's too complicated, maybe simply leaving a posted note for the public that might be tuning in online. They would be able to see that we're resuming at 10:30.
So
yeah, I'm fine with that. That's my preference.
Sean, I got a question for you. If we come back at 10:30 and he's still in court, because we know how court can go, what's your plan of attack then?
I'm hoping I would have at least an update. Maybe he could have his staff communicate with us and update. He knows that 10:30 is kind of the time slot that we're expecting him, so I would anticipate he would give us some kind of communication so that we could advise the board at that time, should we need to continue. If it looks like it's something that we might need to continue, we might need to bump this for a week. I'll defer to the board's preference because I recognize this kind of pushes our meeting a little bit longer than anticipated.
Keith?
I would just recommend then that we recess until 10:30.
Okay, I do believe Commissioner Peck had another comment that he wanted
Oh, yes,
to go.
you're correct.
Go ahead, Commissioner Peck.
I wanted to highlight for people, since there's been a lot of confusion over the last 72 hours about what it requires for us to remain in phase 2 or possibly move to phase 3, although phase 3 doesn't appear to have even been defined fully yet. But for us to remain at least in phase 2 and avoid being pushed back to phase 1 automatically, we must maintain or exceed performance that got us into phase 2. So there are 4 criteria that we get measured by, and we must continue to meet all of the criteria, at least 3 out of 4 categories. If we meet 4 out of 4, that's great. If we meet 3 out of 4, that'll keep us phase 2. If we are flatline, meaning we're still meeting all of 3 of the 4 categories but haven't improved any, it's just flat, that also will keep us in phase 2. But if we dip below and we don't meet at least the minimum requirements for 3 of the 4, we automatically go back to phase 1. So there was some confusion about whether we had to meet 2 out of 4 categories going forward or whether it was 3 out of 4, and it is 3 out of 4. Thank you.
With that, I'd like to add a comment too, and I think that this is a good sign that this new layer of bureaucracy that's been laid upon us as joining with other counties and with the miscalculation of these numbers by the hospital in Walla Walla actually held this county and other counties back is a good sign why we should not be allowing this new layer of bureaucracy without the representatives that are over there in Olympia voting it in. This has been put in place by a governor that's basically out of control. And when we don't even have the numbers for phase 3 to move into, this is like a moving target. This has no sense of stability to it for us as counties and our governments. So with that, I'm willing to come together with some other counties and write a really strongly worded letter to the governor that without any documentation of phase 3 and with this miscalculation of numbers holding us back, you are hurting the businesses in our county. with that, we will go into recess. Did I hear somebody else on the mic?
This is Commissioner Peck. I was just going to add that the Washington State Association of Counties has formally opposed the regionalization of public health and has been putting significant pressure on the state legislature and the governor's office, and near as I can tell will continue to do so. That's in partnership with the Washington State Association of Local Public Health Offices, sometimes shortly referred to as WASALTO. So there's no love of the idea among the State Association of Counties or public health officials, and they are pushing back on it quite vocally. Thanks.
Okay, with that, we'll go into recess until 10:30, at which time we'll reconvene the meeting and see if we have our executive session in place. Okay, we are back from recess, reconvening the meeting and calling an executive session. Sean, do we have our caller?
I don't see Sean on
Jen, are you there?
the... Jen's there.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Do we have our caller?
Yeah. I believe Sean was going to call in, and he's getting the number to the attorney as well.
Okay, should I wait till we have him on the phone to call the executive session?
Yes, please, because otherwise the clock will start running, and we'll all just be staring at each other.
Okay.
Can I hang up the 2969 then?
Other employees are on there, or
Oh.
if they're not, you can,
For the executive session, though.
for the
I'll have
executive
to hang
session.
up. Yeah.
Oh, we never started at 5854, so they can't come on.
I'll need to disconnect the 2969 and start the 5854. So we're waiting to hear from Sean.
I say if we don't got him now, we postpone until next week.
Jen, do you know if you got any communication from Mr. Safarli that he would be available at 10:30?
I have not gotten any recent communication from him. The hearing he had at 9:30 was supposed to be really quick. So really quick in federal terms. So he anticipated it would have only lasted the hour. Let me put you guys on mute, and I'll try and get a hold of him.
Sean is calling in right now. Apparently Mr. Safarli sent an email to Karen with his phone number for her to call. So we should be okay. So Sean said it's okay to start the exec session, and he will join us as soon as he can call in.
Okay. I'll need to, after you've announced the executive session, I'll need to hang up this phone and create a new call in.
Okay, with that, we are going to move into executive session under RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses I. And Keith, how long will we be in exec session?
Request up to 40 minutes for the executive session.
Okay, 40 minutes.
And would include myself, the Board of Commissioners, Jen Johnson and Sean Sant from the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, the clerk to the board, and Mr. John Safarli, our outside legal counsel.
Okay, we have come out of executive session with no decisions made, but we are going to go back into executive session under RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses I, for another 30 minutes. Okay, with that, we are coming out of executive sessions with no decisions being made. And with that, we've got any other further business, commissioners? Hearing none, we are going to adjourn the meeting.